Hello, everyone, and welcome to the March 19th meeting of the New York State Independent Redistricting Commission. Thank you all so much for joining us. Some brief housekeeping details. We are joined by a new commissioner, Willis Stevens. Keith Wofford, who was formerly a commissioner, has unfortunately had to resign from the commission. I just wanted to take a moment to say, while we are members of different parties, I thought Keith was a fantastic member of the commission, and I thought he did an excellent job serving the people of the state of New York. We may have been members of different parties. More importantly, we were members of different law firms. But I am very pleased that he was a member of part of this process, and we wish him well. I don't know if any of my fellow commissioners want to speak about Keith.
No, he'll be missed. I think he was a great member. He brought a lot to the commission, and I think his perspective will be missed. But I am happy to see that we have a new commissioner on board. Willis Stevens certainly brings a wealth of knowledge and experience, not only in government, but in his community. And his family goes back a long way in community service, and looking forward to working with you, Commissioner Stevens.
So, Commissioner, would you like to briefly speak?
Well, very briefly, I'm pleased and honored to have been appointed to fill the shoes of Commissioner Wofford. I only met him a couple of years ago, and I was very, very impressed with his intellect. And I know that he'll be sorely missed, and he's leaving some very large shoes to fill. I'm pleased to be with this group. I think we've got some important work to do, work that was delegated to us by the voters of the state of New York. And I believe this is the right way to be going when we talk about redistricting. So hopefully we can get through all the procedural hiccups that I've been reading about, and we can get to the work of doing the business of the people. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I think I speak for everyone when I say welcome. We're very pleased to have you. So in terms of updates, as always, we start on a budget update. Co-Executive Director Brakel, could you give us an update on the One House budget proposals?
Sure. Both the Assembly and the Senate filed their One House budgets last week. The Assembly was put in operation funding for the commission, and they had funded it in their One House at $7 million. And the Senate had funded the IRC in the same manner at $4 million. The one thing that differs is they did do away with the $1 million reappropriation that exists. So it would be 7 million and 4 million. It wouldn't be 5 and 8, I guess is what I would say. So the 1 million reappropriation was removed.
Doug, if I could ask you a question, the numbers I saw were released in the two One House bills. Has there been any Article 7 language offered by the majorities as to how the money is to be utilized? I mean, as all of you know, Section 94 of the legislative law requires the legislature to make the necessary appropriations, as well as to provide for compensation for members and reimbursement for expenses for members and staff, and to assign any additional duties that they may feel, the legislature may feel are required for the commission to undertake, as well as direct other agencies to assist us where necessary in order for us to properly perform our constitutional duty. So was there Article 7 language associated with or are there discussions going on with regard to Article 7 language?
With the resolutions that were passed by both houses, there was no Article 7 language attached to the appropriation. And I have not had any conversations in regards to Article 7 language that might be in the final enacted budget.
David, I just would ask, or David or Karen, I just would ask that, are you guys talking? I mean, we're not majority appointed members. We're minority appointed members. Are the majority members having discussions with the majorities as far as what that Article 7 language is going to be, or what it might contain, or what requirements? We certainly have requirements as to how we're going to operate, and needs that we have, and unanswered questions. So if we went by the deadline and the legislature left town, so to speak, after April 1, and we don't have Article 7 language, we're still sort of up in the air as to how we operate. So are you guys talking to the majorities about that? And if so, what are they saying?
I am not involved in those conversations, but I'm sure they're happening.
Well, happening amongst themselves, or with us? Or are they going to happen with us? Are they going to reach out to us with respect to what our needs, or how we think that we ought to be operating with that Article 7, those Article 7 provisions? They can put poison pills in the Article 7 too that would hamstring us. So the only thing I would urge is that if you guys are going to talk to the majorities about Article 7 and what we need, we'd like to be included in those conversations.
Okay.
Yeah, let us take that back, George.
Yeah.
Because I think, I haven't talked to anyone specifically about Article 7. But let me take that back, and we'll get back to you.
I mean, we have a first step with a number, but that number doesn't matter unless we've got, Article 7 language that allows us to operate, because we really still can't do anything until we have that Article 7 in place.
Is there anything else? I mean, you are an expert at this, George, in a way that many of us aren't. Is there anything else we should ask about?
Well, we just need to have Doug and Karen be able to sit down with, whoever's going to make the decision on what the Article 7 language is going to be, to provide the input that we need for both of our sides here, to operate. I mean, issues about compensation, issues about reimbursement, issues about just plain operating, or cooperation with other agencies. I mean, are they going to be? I mean, is LAT4 going to be required to help us? Are we going to be able to have all the data? Is OGS going to be required to get us a place to live? I mean, we going to? All these issues are all critical with respect, or potentially involved with the Article 7 deliberations, until that's put together as is required. But by the way, I mean, everyone here is familiar with Section 94, paragraph 9 of legislative law that spells out what they're supposed to be, the legislature's supposed to do within the budget process. And so, while I'm grateful and frankly pleasantly surprised that they came in with a number, both of them came in with numbers that we can work with, if they tell me I can't spend it,
I'm happy we were able to pleasantly surprise you, George.
So I don't want to be, I don't want to be a pain here, but at the same time,
no worries, no.
We need to be at the table here with how we're going to operate, because they're going to tell us what we're going to do.
No, thank you, George. Yeah, no, I think you're right. Let us get back to them, and we'll report back to the full commission.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I would just point out, in addition, the way this is structured is going to be critical as to what our actual operating expenses are. They had us going through SUNY research, and that was obviously unacceptable for many reasons. But if we're made a standalone, that changes the nature of our operation in terms of the support services we have to give the employees, whether or not what our insurance costs, just the benefits costs are, all sorts of things that need to be addressed affirmatively here, because I think when when our executive directors went forward with a number of, say, 3.9, as I recall it, in addition to the 1 million, they were certainly not aware of all the potential expenses based on structure, and it may affect our final number needs significantly. You know, if we have to have our own personnel section or whatever, we're going to have a different employee structure than was envisioned initially by us. So all that stuff is critically important moving forward.
Yeah, look, it's great news that we're in both one house budgets. It really is. It's a step forward, but we really haven't moved from a practical standpoint from where we are. The $1 million being withdrawn, so we don't have actual funding now. We're hoping that the budget actually passes on April 1st or before April 1st, which is still, given what's happening in Albany, up in the air. The budget may not pass on time. We may not be funded, and the nature of that funding becomes important. So, you know, there are a bunch of question marks there that, frankly, have us still wondering and will have us wondering until they're clarified. So to the extent that the executive directors can participate in those discussions, it's a positive.
You know, points taken, and I definitely appreciate Commissioner Martin's and Commissioner Nesbitt, your points. So let us go back and we'll come back to the commission with additional information on this point.
That's great.
Anything else in terms of the budget and the allocations? Right, next we have an item of good news from Karen. Karen, if you could report to us from the Census, from the Census Bureau, yeah.
Yes, the Census Bureau plans to release an interim data product in August before the PL. So if the timing is right and we receive the prisoner adjusted data in time, we could have draft lines ready by the September 15th deadline, and we'll be in compliance. It's a tight window, but it is possible.
So as I said to Karen, everyone cancel your August vacations because we'll be drawing lines, hopefully, during that time. Does anyone have any questions for Karen on this topic?
Any word on the congressional reapportionment counts release?
No.
So
it's
current date?
Yeah. Right, I believe it's end of March, so soon.
Karen, one question. So the way that the Census Bureau presented it, they were saying that the data is going to be in a format that is, you know, relatively unstructured. What exactly does that require on our end in order to be able to use the data for map making? That's
a good question. So I'm hopeful that Caliper will be doing this work. It's going to be in legacy file format, which requires a bit of extra programming to get it ready. And it's possible that Caliper will do this work, and if we decide to purchase Maptitude, it would be ready in the software.
And for the public, can you explain what Caliber is?
Caliper is the software company that produces Maptitude, Maptitude for redistricting.
Okay, so there's no, I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
Doug, do you have
jurisdictions
an opinion on that?
In the past? I believe Latport used them in the last round.
Yes.
Used that vendor.
And Commissioner Martins, you were saying?
Yeah, I just wanted to hear from Doug Burkell if there was anything he wanted to add to that, or.
No, frankly, it's good news. It's just making sure that the data is correctly and can be converted. And I think Karen articulated that it will be fine to do that. It just now got to happen. You know, that's what the census is saying currently, but there's been a lot of changes.
I
Karen,
was
I
going to
don't
say the Census Bureau has said many things over the last year.
So the 2020 geography files have been released already, right?
Yes,
Yes. So we're
correct.
closing in on it.
Well,
Yeah.
assuming we have the funding, assuming we have the ability to go out there and get space, get the computers, get the program, get the staff, then we can receive the data and we can actually use it. But yes, we're catching up.
Correct.
Hopefully.
And Karen, is there any, so there's no specific staffing needs. We don't have to hire a specific additional person on top of what we currently budget.
If we were required to manipulate this data ourselves, we would have to hire a programmer to do it. Yes.
And is that something that could be done as a consultant, or is that someone where we would have to hire a full-time programmer for these
Either.
purposes? Okay.
Either.
Okay. But we won't know.
We
For a
won't know.
while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I suppose I could reach out to Caliper if it's okay with you and find out if they plan to do this work.
Commissioners, is that all right with everyone?
I think that makes sense.
Okay. I'm sure they're getting these questions from all 50 states, so hopefully they'll have
Right.
a quick answer. Right.
The reality is, that brings up a more basic question for us to discuss when our funding is actually in place and our executive directors are in a position to actually put together a budget and propose our staffing model. We'll actually be able to review the appropriate staffing model, whether we're going to rely on staff or consultants or a combination of both. We're still not there yet, but I think between Doug and Karen, we will be able to review different options. So I think it's probably a little premature now for us to be discussing whether we're going with a consultant or whether it can be done with staff without having a holistic approach as to how we're going to address all of the issues that the commission has before it. But
agreed, Commissioner Martins. I think this was just for purposes of whether we needed to change our budget or not going ahead. But I completely agree with you. And I think that consultants versus in-house is one of the questions that we will have to resolve, and which at least I personally am not sure how I feel. But yes, I completely agree with you. Anything else on this question, on this issue?
I have a question about whether or not we are going to be able to work with LAT4, or LAT4 is going to be a resource for us, and how that impacts our independence.
Well,
Can't answer that at the moment, but what I could tell you is that we will have obviously access to data that LAT4 posts on their website. And any data used for redistricting will be made available to the public, and we can grab it from the website.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just like to impart that I think LAT4 could be a source, but should not be the source. We're kind of here not to be LAT4.
Yes, exactly. And this comes from also this question that, the process of redistricting, it kind of requires that LAT4 do parallel work to ours, and because of how the constitutional amendment defines the process of line drawing, right? So, I just want to learn a little bit more about how we may or may not, use LAT4 as a resource.
I think that same constitutional language gives our independent commission the ability to call upon any range of state agencies that can help, or state, I would imagine primarily, that could help us carry out our responsibilities. That's my understanding.
Okay.
There are other agencies, for example, I believe the state database is actually maintained, the official state demographic base is maintained at State Department of Labor. So, and then there are other major universities, a few in New York, that are designated repositories of census data. I believe Cornell University is one, a New York University is another. So I think we have the ability to reach wherever we need to get the data and information to carry out our responsibilities.
Commissioner Flato, I agree with you, and that's the way it's supposed to work. I just also would again reiterate that the provisions of Section 94 of the legislative law also requires the legislature to provide for our access to that data and those agencies and the cooperation. So while I would like to believe that it's implied to be required, I think that if you take a look at that section of the statute, I think that you might also concur that it's important for the legislature to stamp approval for our authority to access that information and require those agencies and other depositories to provide that information to us upon request.
Agreed.
Commissioner Barnes, you unmuted. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Karen.
I'm sorry. I just want to correct the record. The apportionment data is due April 30th, not end of March.
That preliminary file from the U.S. Census Bureau?
Yes.
Is coming April 30th or thereabouts?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Martins, you had unmuted yourself. I wasn't sure if you wanted to speak on anything. Okay, no. Anything else on this issue, commissioners? All right, so moving ahead, we had Eva Lease had generously put together a draft engagement plan that has been circulated to the full commission. Now that we are on the cusp of receiving our money and actually being able to do things, we wanted to discuss this as well as discuss how we wanted to go about approaching the public. I think it's imperative, knowing that that we should be getting our money imminently. I think I speak for the whole commission when I say that we want to be able to hit the ground running and start to move as quickly as possible on our mission to get input from the public and begin drawing lines. So we had agreed several months ago that we would conduct 2 rounds of hearings. The round of hearings required by the state constitution, where we go on the listening tour throughout the state. And we had agreed that we would go on a round of hearings prior to drawing the lines, to solicit public input. The exact format of that, I think we kind of left up in the air. I think we had definitely discussed mirroring the locations that the state's constitution contemplates and soliciting input from the public that way. Commissioner Cuevas Molina's plan also includes various meetings with different groups as well. But what are your thoughts, commissioners, on the plan? And again, thank you, Commissioner Cuevas Molina, for actually putting pen to paper and putting this together.
Well, I just say again, thank you as well. I think though, we keep whatever discussions we've had previously, our time frame keeps getting more and more compressed. And we are uncertain now, even we're predicating a lot of our thoughts and ideas at this point on an on-time budget. I'm not sure that that's assured this year either. So we need to, I think, be responsive to whatever the Article 7 language looks like and what our operating parameters are going to look like and what our actual budget monies are like in order to be able to accomplish this. So, well, I think getting this out there is a worthwhile thing to do. I think it's not timely in terms of discussion, especially as close as we hope we are to getting answers through this process for budget and the nature of us under the Article 7 question, or, however that ends up being developed. So, I think we're all frustrated about getting started here, and concerned and anxious to do work. But again, we're back to the same old questions about archives and doing the appropriate thing organizationally and giving ourselves the appropriate support structure to comply with the law. I don't think we're in position to say that we're there with any of it. So hopefully next month at this time, we'll be in a position to move forward on some of our questions, on some of our activities based on a plan that's predicated on what the legislature does in the next couple of weeks.
If I could,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
I'm sorry, Jack. If I could add, I know that there was some question regarding indemnification of the officers of this commission being up in the air. Would that be something that would be clarified in the Article 7 language, or is that something that has to be done independently? If the co-executive directors could speak to that, I'd appreciate it.
Karen, Doug, you never received a response to our letter to the AG, if I remember correctly.
No.
Right.
We did receive a response that they received it, but we have not gotten a response.
Things are busy in Albany, but
for all kinds of reasons.
But I mean, I agree that this is something we should resolve. My concern with the SUNY RF going the SUNY RF route was always this question of indemnification. Assuming we are able to remain directly under the umbrella of the state, I would think, and I look to Gene Banger, our former Assistant Attorney General who handled these, I think that we would be fine if we remained under the umbrella of the state, right, Gene? Or no? Okay. I think we may have lost Gene. You're on mute. I don't know if. Okay, we may have lost Gene. But yes, I think this is something we will clarify with the legislature. Though, my read of the law is that we would be indemnified if we were under the umbrella of the state. But I don't know if anyone has anything else to.
Well, I think, as you recall, we may have all been operating under that assumption until it was brought into question by state. So we're having it brought into question. We certainly want it clarified before we move forward. I don't think there are any of us here that are ready to take on this job without indemnification. It's nonsensical, but however that needs to be provided, whether or not it's a matter of current law, or as we hope we hear from the Attorney General, or if it needs to be a matter of future laws through whatever process needs to be done before we can do anything.
And we follow up with the Attorney General's office, our co-executive directors.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. John, what did you say?
That was one of the items in the letter that went to the AG, right?
Yes.
Clarification.
Yes, Doug and I can reach out.
I think that might help.
Yeah, and I think that the question would be, because I understood why, if we went through the SUNY RF route, why we potentially wouldn't be indemnified, and certainly I was very concerned for Doug and Karen and our staff in terms of indemnification. But yeah, if you could reach out for clarification, that would be excellent.
To the matter of inclusiveness, and this kind of wraps into what Cuevas Molina did, and thank you for that, for putting such thought into it. Part of being under the CUNY, the Research Foundation, soft money is a matter of there's a certain amount of independence, and whether the Rockefeller group was going to, who was going to do the drafting. So that was another big problem, and it's a matter of including as many resources as possible and coming around to this Cuevas Molina's list, which was thorough. I'd say had a lot of different names in it. We just want to be very careful to make sure that we're presenting this as a completely open and inclusive process, and everybody's invited to submit it. We're not necessarily going to cherry pick or or pick people to come and speak with us. We're open for everyone, and we're going to draw our own lines and not have the Rockefeller Foundation or whatever group they're thinking of doing it. I think these are very important things that we need to keep in mind as we perform these duties, and that's my 3 cents for the day.
No, I agree, Commissioner Brady. And I think one question we do have is, so Commissioner Cuevas Molina in her draft listed a number of different groups that we would have separate hearings with. Do you have any additions to those? I think that I agree with Commissioner Nesbitt that the exact timing very much is predicated on what comes out of the legislature and figuring out our steps. But I think it would be good for us to discuss, what interests do we want to have hearings for? I mean, are you opposed to, if time allows, would you support the idea of having separate hearings for, focusing on different groups across the state? Are there any additions that you would want to have?
If I might join in here, I think that's the whole concept is inappropriate. The idea that we would give special hearing to any group of any kind would be inappropriate. We have to give access through our hearing process to everyone. If the individual commissioners want to contact a group to be part of a hearing, an existing hearing, I think that's fair, but there's an inherent unfairness to us extending special privileges to special groups. I mean, it's almost it's sort of like allowing if I were to say I don't want to make a specific example, but anyone that you allow in with a special status, I think violates the premise of our existence. We need to allow equal status to every voter in the state and everyone that has interest. Certainly aren't in the business of excluding them or anyone, nor the work of individual commissioners. But as a commission, the existence of a list, it's sort of like, what if it were a blacklist? On the other side, I just don't think that's the way we should go about it. We should allow access, urge access, but we're not in the business of making special allowance for access to any group. It just that flies in the face of the idea.
If I may, in the plan that I proposed, that's not what I propose, right? What I say, these are organizations which have in the past been active in the redistricting process and in giving testimony in past redistricting processes, right? And that these might be people who could help us get more people in the community engaged with the redistricting process, right? Right now, we are lacking in resources, right? Just to say, the least, right? And many of the organizations that are in the list of the proposal for the public hearings plan are organizations that are well established, that have resources, that have, the established ways of communicating with the public and getting the word out, which could help us increase access and input to the commission. That's why those organizations are listed in the proposed public hearings plan. And of course, in the plan, no one is going to be excluded from giving testimony or participating in the public hearings, right? That would be undemocratic, of course, and it is our job to help expand democracy within our state. So that's what I would say about the list of organizations that we would be trying to reach out to so that they can help us reach the public in a more, comprehensive way.
And if I may, sorry, Professor, if I may just add, I don't think this is about special access to anyone. I think this is not about excluding. This is about expanding who we can get to come in. So being put on a list, as you said, it doesn't sort of look like anything sinister, because it's not a matter of if you're not on the list, something's wrong. No, it's just that, as Professor Cuevas-Molina said, these organizations have done this job. If we really are serious about expanding our reach and expanding the scope, it wouldn't be a bad idea to deal with organizations that have experience doing exactly that. No one is being excluded and no one is being given special access. That's all.
Yeah, and I would really love it if you guys, like if everyone on the commission could contribute to say, look, I know of this organization that can help us make this public hearing process, a really inclusive public hearings process, right? I certainly do not have, I'm not omniscient of all of the possible organizations that may be partners with us in this process. So it is my hope that you will all contribute and say, look, I know this organization, or I know these people who can help us have a wider reach.
And if I may, the effort, and I want to thank Commissioner Cuevas-Molina for putting this together. It's our responsibility to reach out to everyone, and I'm going to try and channel Commissioner Frazier, since she's not here. That's what we're supposed to be doing, everyone. I do happen to think that lists happen to be troublesome in this setting, because by creating a list, you're by definition excluding somebody else. And I know that's not the intent, I get it. But at the same time, if these are the groups that are most established in order to do that, our responsibility, I think, is to go beyond these groups to people who don't have the kind of institutional structure, and see if we can't actually reach groups that are not engaged, that have not participated in the process, to go beyond the groups that are set up specifically to influence this process to those that aren't. And I think we need to be open to that. So by creating lists and going exclusively to those who have already testified in the past and already have the structure, I don't think we're actually doing what we're supposed to be doing, although I get it. I certainly do. We have to start somewhere. So we need to invite everyone, and I don't want anyone to get the sense that by including these groups, we are excluding those that aren't as well organized, well funded, and don't have a structure in place, because those are the people who don't have a voice. Those are the people who we should also be reaching out to participate. Having said that, so I understand where Commissioner Nesbitt is coming from and the concern that's voiced, and we should all take that and move forward with it. It's not that we shouldn't exclude anyone. It's not that we shouldn't have a list per se, but it's that we shouldn't rely on that list and those people who are the, let's say, the usual suspects when it comes to redistricting, and have a structure and have funding and have staff and are there purposefully to influence this process. We have to go beyond them to others as well. And we should be clear about that in our discussions and how we approach our outreach to those who don't have that voice and that structure. Having said that, I do thank you for putting it together. I think it's awesome. I would just have a couple of suggestions, having gone through it. One, we need a place in the southern tier. It's not on this list. We need to go somewhere either like Corning or Binghamton, because there is nothing. Everything's up along the northern tier and, certainly downstate, but we do need to have a place or two in that southern tier. We need to get there as well as part of this process. Two, possible locations in Nassau County. Hauppauge is not Nassau County.
We're not having this at your house, Jack.
We can, but I would suggest perhaps looking at SUNY Old Westbury in Nassau County. And if we're going to go out to Stony Brook, do SUNY Old Westbury. We can do the Empire Center, but since that's in Suffolk County, between SUNY, the Empire Center, and Empire State College and SUNY Stony Brook, we'll pick one. Or if we're going to have two hearings, we'll do one once and the other time. The other thing I'd like to think we can do is let's have a discussion. Maybe not today, but maybe the executive directors can talk to us a little bit about the possibility of, as we are still in a pandemic, that first round should be geared towards doing it virtually, and the possibility of doing it virtually, with the idea that hopefully, if things have gotten to a point where everyone's been vaccinated and we have the kind of safety protocols in place, we can actually look to doing in-person meetings later in the year. But that's really it. I think we all want the same thing. We all want to have outreach. We just don't want to be, or anyone who may be listening, to think that by creating a list and going to people and groups that have been organized and funded and exist purposefully for these redistricting, the redistricting process, that we are not interested in reaching out to others as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Martins. And I think that the question of having something in this other tier is essential. Would everyone agree with having that both in the pre-drawing and post-drawing, right? So even though it's not mandated by the state constitution, would everyone agree with adding those so that we'd have two hearings in the southern tier?
Is the reason why the southern tier not involved because I'm from the southern tier?
I was going to say, George, why is Jack the one pushing for this, but you aren't, George, right? What's going on?
I was channeling George as well.
Channeling George and Elaine.
It doesn't deliberate. It's deliberate.
If I can,
Commissioner Brady, yes.
If I can piggyback a little bit on what the wonderful things you said. Looking at this process, and this is Doug and Karen as executive directors, we can look at geography now. Is about all we can look at, because we're not settled with the money, we're not settled with the indemnification, we're not settled. But the geography is important, and as we take this I'm remembering Commissioner Flateau from the city from 20 years ago. We're looking at this from a geographic standpoint and the mapping and all that, and then inviting all comers for those particular areas. So we're not really going to have a hearing up in the southern tier about what's happening in Brooklyn, although you're welcome, because I can talk about Brooklyn. But so it will work itself out geographically to invite all comers. We wouldn't say have a meeting with and I'm just picking any DEF, any DEF, which are all wonderful organizations. We wouldn't have a specific meeting geared towards, this is the XYZ DEF meeting. It would be, this is the meeting for the southern, I know I'm saying the obvious, the southern tier, or this is the meeting for Brooklyn, or this is Southeast Queens, or whatever it is, and all comers are invited and welcome, and we want to reach out to all groups that have been included and excluded in the past. And if we work on this on that geographic basis, being inclusive that way, we can probably do exactly what we need to do and not offend anybody and be as inclusive
well,
as possible.
so Commissioner Brady, one issue I have with that, right, is that there are interests in the state, there are populations in the state that are not geographically bound, right? And so what California did was that they had a hearing specifically devoted to people who drew lines outside of geographic bounds, right? They had a hearing devoted specifically also to people who drew statewide maps, right? And so that's my concern, right? And I think we all agree that we want as many people to come talk to us as possible, and and we want to empower the people of New York to tell us what they think the line should be. But that was the only reason why I thought it would be a good idea to have hearings not specifically looking at a specific geographic location, right? Yes, Commissioner Flateau.
So how would we there's a couple of areas of expertise that I think we want state-of-the-art current information on. One would be the current state of redistricting law and voting rights law, because those are going to be major legal parameters we're going to have to operate with. And another area that keeps coming up is communities of interest. So how would we say incorporate, and there may be another, it might be census demographics. Once the Census Bureau unloads that next release on us, it sounds like in the next 2 or 3 months, we may want some experts in these different areas, whether it's the law, whether it's census data, to tell us state of the art, just as we're about to undertake our assignment, what is their best thinking? What is their, what is their analysis or critique or recommendations around the law, around using this latest census data to do our job? How would we incorporate that expertise? Would there be another type of meeting? Would we just convene, call them to our commission meeting and have a panel of them? It's done in other venues. The Congress of the United States does that. Our legislature uses that approach. But I just want to get a sense from our commissioners. How would we approach incorporating that input in our assignment to redraw a line?
Yeah, I agree, John. I mean, I think that it would be excellent for us to, call in experts and have them speak before this commission. I think that
wouldn't be a public hearing per se. You're saying
right.
Okay.
Right. And I think that there's a difference between, what you're talking about, John, and kind of the open call that we're having for the people of the Southern Tier, right? And I think it would be essential. Obviously, we will retain legal counsel. There are too many lawyers on this commission already, but I think that we should definitely retain legal counsel. And obviously that would not be on these calls. Well, actually, it would be in executive session, right, would be their discussion. But yeah, I mean, I think that would be essential. And I think, one of the few silver linings of the pandemic is Zoom, right? Is the ability to have more people come before us and talk than would normally be the case, right? Ultimately, the only cost to the commission in terms of having more people come and talk is time, right? And I think that's what we all signed up for, was to have, was to solicit public input and solicit more information from experts. So, I think that would be the format I would envision, but I defer to my colleagues on this.
Well, yeah, I think that the biggest obstacle that we have in this process is time, right? How much time are we going to have, once we get funding, if we do get full funding, to engage in this public hearings process, and then draw draft lines, and then have another series of public engagement events, right? So, as we move forward, I think that's one of the biggest things that we need to take into consideration when we finally get to the point where we can put together a calendar of public hearings. And I do agree that yes, the first round should probably be done through virtual meetings, and hopefully the state will help us in that process of getting public input through through Zoom, and then going out there and meeting the people where they are. I think that is really the most important thing for us to do.
Great. Does anyone have, before we proceed, does anyone have, Jack brings up a very good point about areas that may not have been contemplated by the state constitution. Are there any other areas that we should add to having hearings at both before and after?
Did we cover all the upstate regions? Mohawk Valley, Finger Lakes, are we covering everything?
Yeah, I'm looking at our friends from upstate, Charlie, Doug, George. Can't let Jack speak for all of upstate. So,
well, we can if he does a good enough job. Actually, I think those are things to consider. Again, I hate to keep saying this, but we got to see how much time and money we have. Ideally, we would do the best job of covering the state. I particularly have some concern that we don't have anything in a rural area. The other comment I would make, and I know Dr. Molina, Luis Molina, was being thoughtful of participation in suggesting that we have these hearings at night. I would suggest that that becomes as exclusionary as having them all in the day. We need to be able to offer a wide variety of times. I immediately think, if you have them all at night, you won't have many senior citizens out. The other thing is that issues of security and transportation and all sorts of issues come up in the later hours for people that live out here in the hinterland without the public transportation that exists in the city. So as you look at this, we need to look at a wide variety of times. Again, and the idea of being inclusive and getting the best input. And I think we could charge, we individually could speak with our executive directors and over time here develop an inclusive schedule. And I also think, just to add into another subject, that we should have an electronic component to our meetings, to all of our meetings. It's just going to be reality that whatever stage of the pandemic we're at, there's going to be some issue there for some people. And it's something for us to discuss and learn from others how they're doing it, etc.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anything else that commissioners would like to discuss, either on this topic or others? All right, so Commissioner Stevens, you.
Yeah, I just was looking over the possible locations, geographical locations, and I don't see anything on here from the North Country.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, but I just wanted to sit down and look at it again. Yeah.
So
yeah, just so everyone knows, like the geographical locations that are in the plan follow the ones that are listed in the Constitution, right?
Right.
And this is the kind of discussion that I was hoping for, right? Pointing out, okay, so what's missing from what is already given to us in the Constitution of what we should be doing? And that, thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, let's add that as a region, unless there's any opposition. All right. Anything else that commissioners would like to discuss on this topic or others? So let us go ahead and schedule our next meeting. So full disclosure, my wife is due with our first baby on April 15th. So it's a boy, and since he's due on tax day, he's definitely going to be a Democrat. So take that, my Republican commissioners. But that should not stop us in terms of scheduling the the next meeting. Equally likely that she will be at birth tomorrow. So, but just wanted to flag that. But commissioners, we had talked about the 16th, but that unfortunately does not work for several members on our side. We would propose April 8th. I know that is kind of close in time to the budget. The budget may not have passed by then. I hope it has passed with room to spare. But would that work, commissioners? Thursday, April 18th. I'm sorry, Thursday, April 8th.
It doesn't work for me, but I don't know about others. So
is the whole day, George? Or
yeah, I would not be able to participate at all.
Okay. How about the 9th, April 9th?
No, I mean after the on the week of the 12th, but I'm going to be away before that. So
okay.
Yeah, I have a similar problem that week. The following week's okay with me. But
How,
I'm actually going to be.
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just quite scheduled or traveling that the week of the 2nd to the 9th.
Are you guys taking advantage of no longer having to be shackled to Albany around budget time? Is that what you're doing?
I'm also fully vaccinated.
Oh, you got. I'm living vicariously through you, George. You got to go to Vegas or something.
Right.
How, Evilise, what about the 12th?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay,
I can do
Eric.
the 12th.
Yeah.
That doesn't.
Okay, that doesn't work.
Yeah, doesn't quite work for me.
Okay.
10 o'clock. I would have to. Yeah, I could do an hour if we started.
So 10. Eric, does 10 o'clock? Well, how does this work? How does 10 o'clock on the 12th work for everyone? Does that potentially work for the full commission?
Yeah.
Jack, yeah, you unmuted yourself. That works. Okay.
Okay for me.
Well, okay.
Yeah, 10 is good. Later, not much later.
Okay. All right. And we are Eric is saying 10 o'clock on the 12th works for everyone. So, and it will be an hour meeting, so I'll have to keep it short. Hopefully my wife does not go into labor during the meeting.
You want to ask her whether that's what her timetable is, not yours.
Let me go find her, George. All right. So we are agreed Monday the 12th at 10 a.m. will be our next meeting. So in terms of follow-ups from this meeting, I will talk to the legislature about the Article 7 language that George highlighted, and I will get back to the commission on that. Evilise, if you could, I know I am sensitive to Commissioner Nesbitt's concerns, and I agree that we cannot really start doing anything until then. But Evilise, if you could, make the modifications to the plan. And
Yes, I will work on doing some updates, and if anyone comes up with anything else that they want to add, feel free to email me, and I would be happy to add any and all suggestions.
Yeah. And then were there any other follow-ups that, and then Karen and Doug were going to follow up with the Attorney General's office on the question of indemnification. Anything else, commissioners, that we would like to discuss at this meeting? All right. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you to the public for joining us. And hopefully at our next meeting, we will have some money in our account.
And someone will be a new father. Congratulations.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll bring him to our White Plains hearing. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Good luck.